What is going on, guys? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be tuning in from today. How's it going on this wonderful Black Friday here in the United States? A lot of people out there shopping right now, doing the shopping things. We're going to be doing some shopping here in a little bit anyway, so hopefully we'll get this stream done nice and smoothly and be on our way. But as you can tell, guys, right off the get-go here, we are now in the ToLiss319, and there's a reason for that. I wanted to use the Flight Factor 320, but my problem is both aircraft, whether it's the Toliss or the Flight Factor, do not properly simulate an engine 1 failure or V1 cut to the full potential yet. And for lack of time, I want to do a couple more tests in the Flight Factor, the beta mode, in beta, and using the failures. So I didn't have enough time to do where I wasn't satisfied with my results. So we may be back in the Flight Factor on the mock Checkride, but for today's video, we're going to go through it on the Toliss. The Toliss makes it easier to just do a scenario and then load, jump right back and do another scenario, so it's a little bit quicker and snappier, especially for stream purposes. So that's why we're in the Toliss today. But good to see you guys here. Dimitri in the house. How's it going, my friend? We're up in your neck of the woods here. We're back in Seattle on runway 16 left. Dougal McTavish in the house. How's it going, buddy? Good evening to you as well. I like the idea for the classroom emoji there, Dimitri. That's a good idea. I do think we should do that. 7 p.m. for you, Rocco? All right, man. Well, all around the world, all different time zones. That's what makes this fun, makes this great. So we got a little treat for. I got a treat for you here today, guys. I hope it will run relatively smoothly, and I want you guys to understand that this whole stream is going to be predicated basically on entertainment, okay? Because if any one of these situations were to happen in real life, there's a lot of things that go down that happen between the captain and the first officer, crew coordination. So I have to streamline my procedures a little bit to make it possible for me to do it, 1, single pilot, 2, do it single pilot while streaming, and 3, do it single pilot while streaming in an airplane that isn't correctly 100% fully simulated, which is to be expected. So there are things that I'm doing procedurally here that are not going to be 100% what we would do in the real life, but I'm going to try to do it as close to as possible as I can. So on the slate for today, this is the layout for today that we're going to do. It might end up being a little bit shorter stream, but it's going to be a heck of a lot of work for me. So first one, we're going to do an engine 1 fire rejected takeoff, or engine 2 fire. It's going to be the other one. We're going to have an engine fire on the takeoff roll. I'm going to go through a rejected takeoff with you. Then we're going to reset. We're going to do a V1 cut. We're going to do an engine failure after V1. We're going to clean up the airplane, fly it around, and then I will do a hand-flown ILS Cat 1 approach, single engine. And then last but not least, we're going to reset the sim one last time, and we're going to do a V1 engine fire after takeoff, probably around 500 feet or so. And then we're going to do an engine fire shutdown procedure. We're going to shut down the airplane, or not the airplane, we're going to shut down the engine, complying with the fire procedures. And then we'll do a hand-flown Cat 2 approach back into Seattle. So that's what we have on the slate for today. Let's get this thing started. Carl Childress in the house. How's it going? Good morning, Skipper. Good to see you as well, my friend. All right. Austrian 279 says, I want the Pratt & Whitney 1100G for Toliss. Yeah, you and me both, my friend. You and me both. All right. So real quick, guys, we've got the airplane. I already have it set up, ready to go for streaming purposes and making this a little bit more streamlined. Basically, we are on the runway. Everything's been aligned. Our flight plan is a straight-out departure procedure off of a 16 left to a ILS approach 16 right. All the perf data has been set. Our failures have been programmed, and we're going to get on the way here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the engines fired up. I still wanted to start the engines with you guys because BSS is just awesome on this airplane. Let's go ahead and listen to this puppy fire up. Greetings from Germany. How's it going, Jump and Run? Wojtek CYVR, good to see you. Good morning to you. Hello from Eastern Canada. Happy to be watching. I'm not a pilot myself, but how does one practice this? Where do I get checklists, etc.? So the simple answer, SF2417, is in the Airbus, a lot of the checklist items are in the ECAM. So all you really have to do is just follow your ECAM procedure. And I'm going to walk you through that here in this stream. But as far as getting checklist information, I'm not able to disclose that information, so I can't, upload my checklist and stuff like that. But there's tons floating around on the internet. I'm sure you do a couple Google searches, maybe a couple of buddies in the Discord can help you out finding material that you need. But for emergency situations, more often than not, most of, if not all of the emergency procedure is going to be right here in your ECAM. Tony Doc says, hello, just bought the Toliss in the Black Friday sale. Looking forward to getting it in the air. Awesome, Tony Docs. Well, we're going to be getting it in the air today. We're also going to be setting fire to this puppy. I must admit, I did a couple flights, little practice flights in the Toliss. I forget how beautiful this plane is. You would get caught up in the flight factor, but man, the Toliss is a really nice airplane. Flight path, we are in the 319 today, just for this stream purposes. I'm a little bit, it's easier to reset the aircraft and load a couple different scenarios for you. But for the mock Checkride, which I may have to move back, I know I have it scheduled for tomorrow. I may have to move that back, so just keep your eyes open for that. But we should do that one in the 320. All right, so engine 1 and 2 is started. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. And we're gonna go here. Flaps 1. Oh yeah. Beautiful sounds. Beautiful sounds. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to go. Let me come down here to the TCAS. TARA squawking 2000 above mode. Why can't I move my PWS switch? There we go. On an auto. We're going to do a quick flight control check. Full up, full down, neutral, full left, full right, neutral, rudder, full left, full right, neutral, auto brakes max, takeoff config, and I'm going to go ahead and straighten out the airplane here because the Toliss does this little jerky thing here. I'm going to get us recentered on, and then we'll go ahead and stop it here. Alright, so real quick, let's put the brake back on. Let's talk about a rejected takeoff and why do we do a rejected takeoff. So, during the takeoff rule, you hear me all the time say 80 knots, thrust set, checked. So essentially what's happening at 80 knots, the flight crew is verifying that our thrust is set on both engines. Everything is in the green. The pilot monitoring is looking at the engine page, making sure everything is within limits and looking normal. The significance of the 80 knots call out, though, for us here is to signal to the captain the difference between a low speed and a high speed abort. Now, the Airbus makes this decision a little bit easier, and it will automatically inhibit non-essential warnings to the flight crew above 80 knots until reaching 1,500 feet AGL or about 2 minutes after takeoff. And you can see that depicted here on your ECAM. When we take off, after we hit 80 knots, you're going to see takeoff inhibit in magenta. That means any non-essential items are going to be blocked. So if I get an ECAM warning after 80 knots, I know it's pretty significant, but that doesn't mean that we're automatically going to reject for anything above 80 knots. What we brief for anything above 80 knots for an engine or for a rejected takeoff are flight control side stick faults, engine fail, obviously, engine reverser fail or an unlock, engine 1-2 thrust reverser fault would be some amber items that we would definitely abort for. Now, of course, anything red, any master warning, we're automatically going to start a rejected takeoff. Fire warning or severe damage would be one of them. Sudden loss of engine thrust, maybe the engine starts surging or something like that. Malfunctions or any ambiguous indications that the aircraft is not safe to fly. That's kind of out of the textbook there. Anything that's unsafe to fly as deemed necessary by the captain will abort above 80 knots. And of course, any red ECAM warning that I said. Now, a high-speed abort is a dangerous maneuver. Your number one priority in any high-speed abort is to maintain directional control of the aircraft. Get the airplane stopped on the runway safely. After that has been completed, I'm going to come down here and make a PM and say flight attendant stations, or remain seated, remain seated, remain seated. Most often than not, I'm going to say flight attendant stations, depending on the scenario. That means the flight attendants are going to be standing by, waiting for my instructions. Then the first officer is going to then call the tower. He's going to say, you know, Seattle Tower, boarding on the runway. We need emergency vehicle assistance. Can you come help us out? And then we're going to either run an ECAM items right here, or we're going to do an emergency evacuation checklist, depending on the scenario. So that's a little bit about rejected takeoffs and why we do them. But let's go ahead and do our first rejected takeoff. Now, I will admit, I have not even tested a rejected takeoff in X-Plane yet. I've tested everything else. I tested engine failure and all that stuff. So this could be interesting. I'm hoping that it works out pretty well. So I am going to be using TrackIR for this simulation just because, being single pilot, I really need to be able to move my head around as well. So I'm going to get the lights on. Clear for takeoff. RNAV to HereOb. 16 left, RNAV HereOb, clear for takeoff. Or CAVOB. So here we go. Let's spool them up 50%. And here we go. There it is. Man flex, SRS runway. Auto thrust is blue. 80 knots, thrust set. There's our takeoff inhibit on the ECAM right there. Abort. Reverse thrust select. Manual brakes. Decel, 70 knots. Engine to fire. First thing we gotta do is we gotta stop the airplane, set the parking brake. All right. The first officer now is talking tower, saying we're boarding on the runway. We've got an engine to fire, cancel the warning. Engine to fire, ECAM, thrust lever 2 idle. It is in idle. Thrust, let's go ahead and do it over here. Engine to master, off. Engine push button switch. Engine fire push button switch 2. We're going to push. So we're going to come up here and we'll go ahead and push that. This arms the squibs. This is the emergency fire extinguishing agent that arms the bottles. It closes the hydraulic shutoff valve, closes the fuel, closes, opens the generator line contactor, and it also closes the pack. And then we'll go ahead here, engine 1 master, ATC VHF notify, so engine 1 master or engine 2 master is off. And then it wants us to shut off engine 1, and we'll go ahead and shut everything down. We would run through this ECAM, but for the sake of the stream, we're not going to do the entire ECAM. But we would continue with the ECAM, and we would start our evacuation. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that replay here. I'm going to disable real view real quick, because we're going to be doing a lot of replays. But you can see that happens quick. And the auto brakes kicked in automatically, just as they should. And that airplane comes to a stop fast. Let's see, let's back it up here. Here we go. Whoa, that's loud. I want to see if the fire effects are in replay. There it is. The engine's on fire. Maintain center line, maximum reverse thrust selected. Now in an emergency situation, you are permitted to use reverse thrust down to aircraft stop. So I could have left, I could have continued using reverse thrust all the way to aircraft stop. Wow, that's a pretty cool fire effect. Let's watch one from outside. And then we'll reload and start a new, the next scenario where we actually take off. But I apologize. I haven't done this yet in the sim, so it's kind of cool to see how the replay works here. It's a little loud. As we're accelerating down the runway, that's why it's always important to maintain centerline, even on a normal takeoff. Tech Aviator says that braking was very fast. Absolutely. With auto brakes max, guys, and you have to go to an RTO state, well, there's the fire. It is very abrupt. That is pretty cool. And then, of course, we would run the ECAM and evacuate the aircraft. But, all right, that is your rejected takeoff. So let's go ahead and reload the sim here. We're going to actually get airborne now. So let's go ahead and turn replay mode off. Flight configuration. We're going to just go ahead and change location, reset all this to 16 left. Confirm and start. So... Simulation Channel Deluxe says amazing features like the situation saved in 319. Yes, and we're going to do that situation save right now. So I'm going to go here, load selected. Look at that. And we're automatically loaded up. And are the engines on? The engines are not on yet, right? Nope, we're just on the APU power. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and look at our fault scenarios. I'm going to add a new fault. So for this one, we're going to do engine to flame out. And we're going to do it at an indicated airspeed. And we're going to do it at 100. We're going to do it a little bit higher up. Now, there's a reason I'm going to do this a little bit higher. So in training, we'll typically get a flame out or a severe damage separation right at V1. The problem I have with X-Plane and the Toliss specifically, the flight factor I was able to maintain directional control. The Toliss, during an engine flameout on the ground, I cannot maintain directional control no matter what I do. I get full rudder, it's not accurate. So I think that has something to do a little bit with the ground handling effects in X-Plane in general. The flight factor, though, however, is able to maintain, I'm able to maintain directional control a little bit better. So for the sake of the stream, I'm going to do the engine 2 flameout a little bit faster, and as aircraft is already in the rotation phase, just so we can get off the runway. Now, if we drift a little bit right of the runway center line, that's just part of, you know, I'm sorry, I'm doing everything I can to keep it centered, and just know that's not exactly accurate. So we're going to do a 158 knot engine 2 flame out. Apply now. That is saved. We've got APU bleed power. Everything is on. Let's get these engines cranked up. Tony Duck says those effects are awesome. I totally agree, man. I've never, like I said, that's why I liked watching that replay. I haven't seen the engine flameout effects or fire effects yet. How did I set up the engine fire during takeoff roll? So Sim Deluxe channel, just how I showed you there, man. You come to custom fault selection, and you would select engine fire, and there's a bunch of different ways you could have it go off. Now at a time, at an indicated airspeed, at altitude, or random. I put it at an indicated airspeed, and I made sure it was below my rotation or my V1 speed, so I would have to reject the takeoff. So we're going to do 158 knots. Now let's go ahead and fire up engine 2. Cargo door is open. Go ahead and close that up there, ground crew. Where's Cactus 1549 at? I know he's a ground crew operator, right? Gotta close those doors. I think the beacon is off. That's probably why it's still open. Joe J.O. says the flight factor 320. I got net FPS 125 to 30. I bought Toliss today and I got about 10 FPS more. If you have good PC, you won't have problems with flight factor. I agree with that. Yeah, the beta does seem to be a little bit better in performance as well. However, I don't know how you guys feel about running betas on airplanes either, so. Austrian 279 says, why do pilots usually start first engine 2? Also, why do some pilots check 80 knots and why do some check them only at 100 knots? Like I said, Austrian, it could be, it's company specific and airline specific and country specific, but Airbus says you start engine 1 first, so anybody that starts engine 2 first is probably doing it wrong, even though that's what their company procedures say, and I just say that and I'll probably receive a lot of flack for it. But Airbus recommends starting engine 1 first, especially if you're going to single engine taxi. So here in the States, we start 1 first. Now for the Boeing, I have no idea. There could be mechanical reasons for that, or who knows what it is. But for the Airbus specifically, it makes no sense whatsoever to start engine 2 first. Why do some pilots check at 80 knots? I went over that briefly. That's the decision speed for the captain. You have a low speed below 80 knots, and you have a high speed aboard after 80 knots. Different factors come into play above 80 knots. And some check them at 100. Like I said, that could be company specific. It just depends on what your company decides is the decision point for a high speed and low speed aboard. All right, so we've got our engine started. Flaps 1, TA, RA over there. I want to make sure the box is completely set up though. 152, 152, 154, flex 60, and we have an engine failure at 158. I'm going to bump it up a little bit. Because, and like I said, it's very difficult to maintain the ToLiss on center line during an engine failure in the X-plane. And in the real airplane, it's not that difficult. It is difficult, but it's virtually impossible in the ToLiss. So I think that might be a ground friction thing. All right, we're going to go auto brakes max, takeoff config. Everything else looks good. Flaps are 1, cabin check. We'll go ahead and turn off the APU. Let's get our lights on. And what is the weather here real quick? Because we're going to come back to, we want this to be IFR Cat 1 mins. We'll reset that. Perfect. Did that reset my viz? It still looks pretty low. Nope, we're good. All right. All right, so on this takeoff, guys, we're going to have an engine failure after V1. This is the V1 cut. This is the decision speed. This is where your money is made. This is where the channel got its name from. V1 cut, we're going to take off. We're going to do our procedures, and we're going to come back and do an ILS Cat 1. Now, before we get underway, let's talk briefly about what we need to expect and what we're going to try to do as a single pilot flight crew here. So there's a profile, we call them profiles for engine failures or V1 cuts, and it's basically a set timeline of when things are supposed to happen. Now I'm going to go over it, how we do it in real life, and then I'm going to show you how I modify it a little bit for X-plane. So as we start rolling, once we hit V1, we're going to expect an engine failure. After the engine failure at V1, if we are in the flex detent, it is our discretion to go toga or to remain in the flex detent. If we go toga on the ground, you have to be ready to counteract any of that adverse yaw, because when you increase thrust, you're also going to increase adverse yaw, especially with an engine failure. It could make controlling very difficult. So depending on the situation, if it's not necessary, a lot of guys will just keep it in that flex detent or that derated thrust detent until the aircraft is in a safe flying state. Now, your number one objective on a V1 cut is to maintain directional control and make sure you get back on center line or at least parallel to the center line before you rotate. You want to be going in the same direction of the runway. You don't want to go off at an angle. That's no good. That's a bust on your Checkride. You got to go the runway, you got to go parallel with the runway center line as you would on any normal takeoff. After you rotate and the aircraft is climbing away, then you can go ahead and select toga. That would be the time to do it. Now, in the Airbus, we have what's called the beta target, which would pop up here and revert to beta target when flaps go to 0. All that stuff, if you're an advanced Airbus guy, you probably are familiar a little bit about what I'm talking about. It's not simulated in the ToLiss. So this whole brick and stick thing does not really work very well in the X-plane version of the ToLiss319. So what we would do, though, at 400 feet, we'd take off. I would trim the rudder out to make this brick look just like this. Because when we take off, this is going to slide out to the left or the right, depending on which engine failures, and you want to make sure you get coordinated flight. So you press and hold the rudder trim, and you're holding that. It takes a long time, about 10, 15 seconds even, to get that trim in there. Once it's trimmed, then we go ahead and turn on the autopilot, and we're going to continue climbing away from the ground. The Toliss does not simulate proper vertical profile. It goes right into nav mode and tries to start accelerating. So what I have to do in the sim here is, after we rotate, I'm going to select speed to about V2, anywhere between V2 plus 10, and we're going to climb out to our acceleration altitude. Our acceleration altitude is 1970 or 2,000 feet. Once we reach 2,000 feet, or about 100 feet prior, I'm going to press to level off, which is this vertical speed level off push button right here. We're going to press that in. It's going to make the aircraft go command a level off flight director command. As the airplane levels off, we're going to start accelerating. At this point, it's normal. It's a normal takeoff. We watch our speed come up. We get our flap retraction speeds. We clean up the airplane. As the aircraft continues to accelerate, 5 knots prior to green dot, we're going to pull for open climb and continue climbing out 5,000 feet with the airplane cleaned up. Now, all the while that's happening, the pilot flying is doing that. The pilot monitoring is running the ECAM checklist. So it is a extremely task-saturated event for both crew members. Now, I'm going to be doing this single pilot in a 2-pilot airplane here, so there's probably going to be a lot of steps that you see, oh, that looked weird, or you forgot to do that, I forgot to do that. I apologize. A lot of it I am kind of just shifting so I can do it physically and not crash by myself. So I'm going to intentionally not do the ECAM until I can at least get the autopilot on and we're at a safe phase of flight. But just know, in a real event, both crew members are very actively working on the problem for an engine failure. All right, after we get it all cleaned up, we're going to come back around and I'm going to hand fly an ILS single engine back down into Seattle. So, you guys ready? Let's do this thing. Spool them up 50%. Nose forward on the stick. Here we go. Having a hard time finding that climb detent too. There it is. Man flex, SRS runway, auto thrust is blue. 80 knots, thrust set. Neutral by 100. V1, rotate. Engine failure. I'm going to go ahead and go toga. Positive rate, gear up. Now we're trimming it out. So see, now it wants to go into climb mode. This is inaccurate. So I'm going to select speed. V2 plus 10. We're at 1,000 feet. All right, I would call for ECAM actions right now, but we're not going to do that because I'm single pilot. I'm still trying to trim out the rudder here a little bit. As you can see, the beta target's not really modeled very well, and I believe it also should be blue. Alright, so it's pretty much maximum trim. You can see I've got my trim 20 degrees left, and it's doing okay. Alright, I will go ahead for training purposes. I'm going to say select heading. We're going to fly straight out. We'll declare it emergency. Seattle Tower, Victory 205, engine failure. I'm going to say okay, continue, maintain, maintain 5,000 enable. Here comes 200 feet prior to level off. I'm going to go vertical speed 0. Which basically means it's going to command a level off. I'm going to help myself out here by bringing the thrust lever into MCT as well. I don't know why it's in go around track mode. I want vertical speed 0, so you can see it's doing some weird things for sure. I don't want open climb. Okay, so the airplane is doing some weird things for sure. Why are we in open climb? I think it's, the airplane's definitely tripping right now. It's in go around track. Let me go ahead and recycle. Yeah, so this is definitely Toliss in screw up here. Let's go ahead and keep climbing up. I'm gonna do this, we're gonna just do it manually here. I'm gonna go 3,000 feet. We're gonna go open climb. I'm gonna go select heading 200, autopilot 1. And I'm gonna bring the thrust lever to MCT or max continuous thrust. I don't know why we're still in go around track though. That's so weird. I'm gonna try it. So I apologize, guys. This is one of those things that I just don't know why it's doing this. This is not accurate to the real equipment. Okay, at least we're in nav mode now. Let's go heading. Let's see if I can flat. Okay. So hopefully by this time, if this were real life, the first officer would already have the ECAM pretty much completed. But here we go. We're turning. Wow, my frames are really tanking here for some reason. Like really tanking here. Hold on. Alright, there's our altitude. I'm going to go ahead and push for managed speed. Now the aircraft's going to continue to accelerate. Now we can start chipping away at the ECAM. Engine 2 fail. Engine mode selector ignition. So we're going to come over here. Engine mode selector into ignition. We should also clear the caution. That should have been cleared out. Engine 2 fail. Thrust lever 2 idle. Let's go ahead and bring the thrust lever 2 to idle. Now we start the timer, and basically what's happening is this airplane is going to attempt an auto relight within 30 seconds. So I started the timer there. You can see it counting away. And we're going to see if the engine auto relights. I'm going to go ahead and continue turning around here. As we get close to our S speed, we're going to retract the flaps to 0. I don't know why it's so... I don't know if it's because I loaded a safe situation. The airplane is really not happy with frames. Alright, here comes 30 seconds. The engine is not going to relight. Let's go ahead and stop the ECAM, continue cleaning up the airplane. There's our S speed, flaps 0, after takeoff checklist. Gear is up, flaps are 0. Everything else looks normal up here. Bleeds and packs are set. Why are we... Now we're attempting to stall, essentially. Work with me, Toliss. I just talked about how nice you were to me. Should not be a problem maintaining level flight with single engine. Maintain 250. There we go. Back on speed. Autopilot back on. Alright, so we're still where. Let's go back to our ECAM now. The aircraft is stabilizing. We're going to level here at 340 on the heading. 250 knots. Engine 2 failed. No relight after 30 seconds. We're going to shut it down. So engine 2 master confirm. That is confirmed. Engine 2 off. Clear the caution. Engine 2 shut down. Fuel crossfeed on. Come up here. We're going to go ahead and open the crossfeed valve. Clear engine 2. So now we'll go over here. Clear engine 2. And we read what we're missing. So our engine, our hydraulic pump is still running for some reason there. That shouldn't be running. But we know generator 2 is offline. We know our pack 2 is offline. We know that our air bleed is offline for engine 2. So we would clear all these out. And then it says status. So now it's a read status. Cross bleed open. So we come up here. We're going to go ahead and open the cross bleed valve. Now we have only pack... one pack only if wing anti-ice is on. So we're going to have to go down to single pack if we have to turn on the wing anti-ice. Luckily, we don't have to do that right now. We know we have our engine 2 bleed is in op and generator 2 is in op because the engine is obviously off. So clear status, clear status. All right. Now, I would tell the first officer, all right, you know, go to the comm, run our emergency procedures, out of our checklist. We would go ahead and run through that. We would decide if we want to try to relight the engine again. It didn't auto relight. I would say, look, we're on downwind for 1/6 center. Let's just go ahead and set up for the approach. We're not going to relight the engine. So then he would go to the engine 2 shutdown checklist, which is basically the same steps that we just did from the ECAM. Verify the engine is off, everything is secure, and I'll run through it real quick on the shutdown. Because I think there's a couple important parts in there. So the engine 2 shutdown checklist after the ECAM has been completed. Land ASAP, we know we want to do that. We're not in the emergency electric configuration, so we can skip that. We can skip the engine fire push button if not pushed. Engine mode selector to off, it is. Monitor our fuel imbalance, so that's kind of why the ECAM had us turn on that fuel crossfeed, so we could check our, where is she at? There's our fuel page right there. So we want to monitor the imbalance. Now what's weird about the Toliss is when I'm single engine like this, for some reason I keep adding fuel to this wing tank, so that's a bug. We'll keep an eye on it, see if it happens again. We're at 1200. We should be burning relatively fast because we're burning fuel from one engine out of this tank. So this number should be decreasing. We'll see if it actually drops or not. The next thing we need to know is TCAS mode selector TA only. That's because we're single engine. If we get a resolution area advisory, that's based on 2 engines operative. We don't have 2 engines, so we're not going to react to a TARA. That's why we put it in TA mode. If reverser unlocked, no it's not. Secondary failures, we know about that. Continue with the checklist. If ice, we're not in ice. If buffeting, no buffeting. Skip through all that. And then we go, the APU may be started. So now we'll go ahead and fire up the APU. Hopefully in real life, you would have fired that up a little bit earlier in the procedure. But now we're going to start the APU and we're going to get the airplane configured for the ILS back to 1/6 center. So we're going to go flight plan, perf, activate approach phase, confirm the approach phase, 29er.9er2. I hate these click spots on this box, man. I really do. 15 outside, pretty standard. 040 here. And our minimum is going to be, for the standard, is going to be 370. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 370. No, it's not. I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry about that. 800. MDA. Why is our marker beacon on? We don't know. We'll go ahead and turn that off. Flap open. That should have been started earlier. All right, LS push buttons are on. Let's go ahead and turn. Let's see where we are here in our arc. Let's go this mode here so I could see a little bit better. All right, let's go ahead and turn right now, hitting 090, intercept the localizer. Descend and maintain 2000. All right, glide slope blue, lope blue. I do not know what is happening with my frames right now. I mean, I don't think I've ever had 20 frames in the Toliss before. Come back. Once we get on the ground, I'll be able to get through some of your comments again, guys. I apologize. I think the frames might be affecting the flight model pretty good. What if I just go here? I'm just going to clear this out, see if that helps. Let's just go. Let's just clear it out. Wow, look at that, and we're back. Okay, must have been something with the weather that was not. It was not happy. All right, it's beautiful Orbix. We like to see it anyway. Continue coming around. Let's go ahead and reduce speed. Easy there. thrust levers. So it's almost easier to hand fly, when you're hand flying single engine, to use manual thrust, because every time the auto thrust comes in and surges like that, you really get some unwanted yaw. So it's a little bit easier to manually use the thrust levers, which we'll do here in a minute. Here comes our VFE next, -10. Let's go flaps 1. Of course, we're squawking emergency. We told them they were emergency inbound. They're aware of that. Our localizer did not capture, so that's interesting. Oh, it did. Loc star just overshot. That's okay. That's probably just my poor vector. We are in Loc star. Come back to 180 knots. We'll go flaps 2. Now somebody asked me, would you land flaps full with a single engine? Yes, you would do it. You can do it flaps full. Now, if there was another reason, if there was, you know, it would be a briefing item, you know, if you don't think, if you're really heavy, or if there were any scenario where you thought that you wouldn't be able to go flaps full in case you had to go around single engine, then we'd land flaps 3. Not a big deal, but that would be something you'd brief and discuss and factor into your decision making. All right, so now we're pretty much standard ILS approach. I'm going to go ahead and as soon as we capture Anvil, we are a little bit lower than normal. We'll go ahead and do cabin call right now. So I wait for my command on landing. We'll let you know if you have to brace or anything like that. Company's been notified, ATC's notified, everybody's in the loop. Flight attendants are going to be awaiting my command after touchdown, whether it be evacuate or stations. We're going to use manual. Actually, what I'm going to do it just like in the sim. We're going to go low brakes. And we can't land with the fuel crossfeed open, so we got to make sure we close that here momentarily. All right, so it actually did transfer pretty darn equally. So we'll go ahead and close the crossfeed. Close the crossfeed for landing. And we can clear the fuel page. There it is. Thrust setter said this brings me back to flight school. Yes, sir. WizAir80 says the hydraulic page was still showing engine 2 pump normal when the engine is off. Yeah, that is a bug. That shouldn't be there. All right, here comes the glide slope. I'm going to get ready to hand fly. We're going to hand fly this from the glide slope, or from the final approach fix inbound. I'm going to go ahead and configure a little bit early. Autopilot off. Glide slope start. Going altitude set 2,000 feet. Gear coming down. Go ahead and release some of that trim. Flaps 3. Low power. I had it trimmed for high power, right? So now that I'm at low power settings, I can go ahead and reduce some of that rudder trim, get it back to the right. And I'm going to take over the thrust manually just because like I said earlier, it's a little bit easier when you're single engine to counteract your thrust changes with rudder, because you know when you're adding the thrust. Alright, so we are down to land, clear to land, flaps full. Landing checklist, cabin crew advised, auto thrust off. ECAM memo, landing all green. Landing checklist complete, clear to land 16 center. take that rudder out as I reduce the thrust. Don't settle, don't get low on that slope. No idea why the terrain was coming on.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Didn't want to smash it there. We'll take it. That was definitely a little bit of a floaty balloon effect there. It was not my best attempt. As we increase reverse thrust on the only operating engine, you want to counter that with some rudder. Manual brakes. A little high above the threshold there as well. Definitely got destabilized as we came across the runway there. Go ahead and stow the reversers. Come to a complete stop. Set the parking brake. Flight attendant stations. And now we can go ahead and assess the situation. Do we need to have trucks come out and look at the aircraft? Do we need to have fire trucks look at our wheels? Did we overtemp the brakes or anything like that? If not, everything that sounds good, we'll just go ahead and we can exit the runway, and not a big deal. So that was an engine failure at V1 with a very interesting set of circumstances there, with some improper modeling and some bugs and stuff in their failure fault model. But for the most part, you get to kind of see what's going on. You can definitely tell how it's a very high workload, high stress environment. So let's go ahead and pause the sim. Let's take a look at that replay real quick, and then we'll do our last scenario with an engine fire in flight to a shutdown procedure and then a ILS landing. Beautiful Orbix here in Seattle. We get caught back up on these comments here. Carl Childress says, raise the dead, bury the dead. That's what we were taught in flight school for engine restart shutdown. There you go. Dimitri says, folks, all this knowledge transfer deserves at least a like for each of us. Let's do it. I appreciate it, Dimitri. Dougal says, wow, so much I didn't know. Yeah, man, there's a lot that is modeled too that you normally wouldn't see unless you're running a situation like this. So right there, I whiffed it. I'd overflared. And then I definitely just put her down. And this reverser bucket should not open up if the engine is off. So that is also incorrect. But let's back up. We won't do too many replays here. We just want to see. Right there, yeah. Definitely just effed it. I think I was late on bringing the thrust to idle. Sat down nicely, just a foot or so off center line. One engine reverse thrust. Beautiful. One more from the runway. And then we'll get on to our next scenario. The Toliss is beautiful, though. I gotta admit, man. I forget how beautiful the Toliss is. You can see right there where I definitely got a little bit out of whack. And a lot of that had to do with, I think I still landed with 4.7 on the rudder trim. So some guys will actually reset. They say, you know, hey, at, you know, at 500 feet or 200 feet, whatever, or 50 feet, hit the rudder reset for me, which basically centers the rudder trim that you had from your takeoff profile. But I don't do that personally. Some guys do, some guys don't do it. Some recommend it. I personally don't do it for the event of a single engine go around, because now if I just center the rudder trim and for some reason we have to go around and I go around single engine, that yaw is going to be extremely prevalent because I also took out that rudder trim. So, all right, let's go ahead and load the situation one more time. We'll get it perfect. Snaps right back. That is why we're doing the Toliss today. I think the Flight Factor definitely has a little bit better ECAM procedures for these emergencies and things like that. But the Toliss just makes it so easy to just snap back into position and get the airplane restarted. So we'll go ahead and crank them up one more time. Thrustsetter says, how often do you use the simulator in real life? Twice a year, typically, you're going to be doing it. I shouldn't say that. Once a year, it depends. Like, it depends what seat you're in. It depends what your airline uses for recurrent training. You could have, you know, an AQP program where then you would only be using it once a year. I think you can do it also every 8 months or something like that. It varies, but no less than 1 and typically no greater than 2 times a year you're going to be in the sim. Now, when I go into recurrent next week, I have actually 3 sim sessions. I have a warm-up on day 1, then we have our actual recurrent that we do on day 2, and then day 3, we're doing something new this year for enhanced envelope training. Basically, they put you inverted upside down in all kinds of scenarios that you would never expect to get into, but it's to, the FAA mandated it for, you know, getting back to the stick and rudder skills and all that stuff. So I'm going to do some of that in the sim for you after I get out of EET training. And I think that'd be kind of fun to see how these airplanes react at extreme limits. Felix says, would you recommend the X56? Yes, I would. I have the X56 throttle. That's what I use. I had the stick, and it was a great stick for quite a while, but I took it apart, messing around with it, and then I couldn't put it back together. I screwed it up, so I moved on. But I still use the throttle. V1, I am using, yes, I am using the BSS sound pack. Why is our engine 2 not starting? Are we still faulted? We might still be faulted. Oh, yeah. There it goes. Cool. Yeah, Toliss makes it really easy to do this failure training. That's on. Boom, boom. All right. So this is the last one we're going to do today. What we're going to do now is an engine fire after takeoff. So we're going to go add new fault. We're going to go engine. Engine 2 fire. We'll do it at an altitude. Let's do it at... I don't know if this is MSL or what. How high are we above sea level right now at this airport? We're at 430. I'm going to set it for 1,000 feet. Engine favorite 1,000 feet. Alright, so that is set. And our aircraft configuration is... I want to lighten the load a little bit. This is a little extreme. Alright. Seattle, everything looks good to go. 1-6 center after our departure. Perfect. Alright. Init B. Do I need to reload this? I don't think I do. Nope. Alright. Alright, so the last scenario, guys, is engine fire. And we're going to... I'm basically just doing this so you guys get to see me work through the ECAM. There's quite a few extensive steps we're going to be taking for this maneuver. So, alright. I know I'm ignoring chat a little bit, but... Noga Aviator says, why is this on my recommended? Anyway, I sub. Awesome, Noga. Appreciate it, man. Are sim sessions stressful, or are they just like normal flying with the failures? With the failures, they are definitely a little bit more stressful. I think the most stressful part about it is, you know, you're basically on the line for your livelihood, right? You know, if you fail, who knows? The extent of your failure, you could get, you know, worst case scenario, you could be fired, right? So now you're out of a job, and if you're a provider for your family, that's a big deal. So the most stress, I would say, would be that in the back of your mind, knowing, hey, if I totally screw this up, I might put myself out of a job, which takes years and years to get to the... So it can be stressful, though. Just normal situation, but you're trained for it. That's why you're training. This is not the proper FMA here for takeoff, but we're going to roll with it anyway. All right. Let's do this. Brakes released. I wonder why. We'll see what happens here. Spool them up 50. Let's go. Man flex SRS runway. Auto thrust is blue. Dimitri says I'm getting carpal tunnel taking notes today. Awesome, man. 80 knots. Neutral by 100. V1. Rotate. Thank you, Barack. Right on the rotation, man. You just scared me hardcore there. Let me get to that in a second. Runway track. Positive rate. Gears coming up. Why are we not in nav mode? There is our nav. Here we go. Engine 2 fire. Badge fly the airplane first. There's 1,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and turn autopilot 1 on. Lever climb. Pause the sim real quick here for Barack Uslu coming in with a $20 bomb. Says one hell of a stream. Barack, thank you so much for that, my friend. That that donation came in right when I was rotating. I was just kind of definitely threw me for a loop there. Thank you so much for your support in the channel, man, and enjoying the stream. Really appreciate it. Wow, look at that though, huh? We've got problems, guys. It's time to secure this engine and get this airplane back on the ground. So let's go ahead and unpause. We'll get back in it here. Thrust climb, climb, auto thrust. The airplane is flying. Okay, so now this is, we would split up duties, but I'm going to do everything here because I'm single pilot, and this is for entertainment purposes only. Here comes our S-speed, flaps 1. Go ahead and retract that. Engine 2 fire, thrust lever 2 idle. Confirm thrust lever 2, confirmed. Idle. We now have a lever asymmetry. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go toga on the operating engine. Engine 2 master off. So we're going to come over here. Engine 2 master off. Engine acknowledge the warning. Continue the ECAM. Engine 2 fire push button. Push. So we're going to come up here to the overhead and go ahead and push that. That arms the squibs like we talked about on our reject. Now we've got Agent 1 discharge. So we come right back up to the top here. Agent 1 discharge. Press and hold that for about 5 seconds. Then release it. And we should get an amber discharge. That is accurate. That means our bottle basically just blew. We're okay. We're still climbing. Tower declaring an emergency. And we'll say, okay, maintain 5,000 feet. Turn right, heading 270. All right, right turn 270. I'm going to select speed 250. Bring the thrust lever back to the MCT, or max continuous thrust setting. All right, continue with the ECAM. ATC notify, we did. Squawk set on emergency, FO did that. Agent 2 discharge. So we're going to blow the second bottle now. Agent 2, press and hold. And where's our discharge? There it is. Agent 2 discharge. All right, clear engine 2 fire. Clear engine 2 fire. All right. Stop the ECAM. Let's go ahead and set up for the approach here. We're going to activate, confirm the approach phase 29.902. We'll go ahead and put that in the box. Temperature is 15 degrees. This is where it would be really helpful to have that secondary flight plan, right? We're going to go here and here. We're going to go, what's our ILS Cat 1? .630, 16 center. 630. Put that in there. Boom. Perf data has been set. All right, notifying tower, notifying the flight attendants, hey, we have an engine fire. There's nothing to worry about. Hopefully you don't see this. Continue to see that. If you do see that, that means we have a lot of problems still. You can expect my evacuation command once we land on the runway, but just wait for my command once we get back there. Let's go ahead and cycle the box now. We're going to go flight plan direct mode. We're extending the line off Anvil. Toliss does this wrong, but we're going to just roll with it anyway. The final approach course is 164. We'll flip that around. That's 344. So I go radial in, insert that, reselect heading. Now I'm going to go here on my ND to see where I am. All right, we're going to come right now, 350. Basically being vectored around. The goal is to be, you have one guy flying the airplane, he's getting you in position to land, and by the time the other guy monitoring, doing the checklist is done, you're ready to land. All right, we'll continue the ECAM now. We're going to do our engine 2 shutdown procedure. Engine 2 mode selector ignition. So come down here, that goes to ignition. Fuel crossfeed on, just like last time. We're going to turn the, oops, that's the wrong button, almost did something bad there. Crossfeed on. Cross bleed, shut. Go ahead and shut the cross bleed. That's to prevent contaminations from the discharge squibs as well. Cross bleed is shut. Avoid icing conditions. Clear engine 2 shutdown. Clear engine 2 shutdown. Status. Read status. Now this is indicating properly here. We have we've lost our yellow hydraulic engine driven pump. Okay. Clear hydraulic. Electric. Our Gen 2 is offline. Start the APU. Roger. I'm starting the APU. I'm not even going to wait for the flap open message. Clear electric. Bleeds. Engine 2 bleed is offline. Status. Read status. One pack only if wing anti-ice on. We're going to avoid icing conditions. We have in-op systems such as wing anti-ice, engine 2 bleed, pack 2, Gen 2, and the yellow engine generator 2 pump is in-op. Clear status, clear status. APU is spooling up. Let's brief the approach. We're coming in 16 center, ITUC 111.7, 164 final approach course, Anvil. We're going to cross Anvil at or above 3,200 feet. We will hand fly the approach from Anvil inbound. I'm going to go auto brakes medium. I don't even want to mess around. I just want to stop the airplane. We're going to get out. We're going to probably evacuate, especially if the flight attendants are saying, hey, we're still on fire back here. That means we definitely need to get on the ground now. So we're going to most likely evacuate on the runway, descend and maintain 3,200. Come right about 020. Look, our APU just kicked on. We're going to be flaps full. We're on a 320. Do you have any questions? No questions. All right, let's land this bird. We're still smoking. We are still smoking. Now for effects here, well, let's go ahead and customize this. I want to go IFR Cat 2. Let's see if that. Alright. Yeah, my frames are still a little whack. I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, whoop. I shut down Active Sky. I thought maybe that would help it. Let's do manually configure. Let's try this one more time. IFR Cat 2. Level at 3,200. Speed alt star. Reduce speed now to 180 knots. Austrian 279, something we do. Have a nice stream. Thank you, Austrian, for checking in, man. We'll catch you later. WizAir80 says, V1, would you normally check for a fuel leak before opening the crossfeed valve? Yes, WizAir, you would probably, it's definitely be something that you would be monitoring. That's like when it said, you know, check your fuel page. You'd come over here and you want to make sure that you didn't have a leak, especially if you had an engine fire separation. Separation is most likely where you're going to run into a fuel leak situation. I guess X-Plane is just not having the clouds today. That's so strange. I never used to have that issue. Whatever. Let's go ahead and... can I just do match real world? How's that? Huh? It is what it is. But yes, you definitely would probably be checking for a fuel leak as well. And you're also monitoring this page in an event like that. Make sure everything is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Why are we... There we go. Flaps 1. And VFNX minus 10. Flaps 2. Victory 205. You are about 4 miles from Anvil. Turn right, heading 150. Maintain 3,200 shell established. Cleared. ILS 16 setter. 3,200 shell established. Heading 150 to join. Cleared ILS 16 center. Alright, go ahead and back here. Let's go ahead and verify, make sure we did activate, confirm we did. That looks pretty sweet though. Definitely something I would not want to see, but in X-Plane it looks cool. Yeah, that's a no bueno right there, guys. Do not want to be seeing that. There's our Loke Star. Perseus says, how common is brakes hot? I'm getting a 9 out of 10 on medium auto brake, and I'm okay landing final approach 35. Medium auto brakes are probably going to get you hot brake almost every time, so that's normal. We do not use medium very often. I'll say that. We don't use them very often. All right, let's go ahead and configure early. Go ahead and press for manage speed. Go ahead and work in that trim now. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the autopilot. Disconnect the auto thrust. We'll go ahead and clear those out. So it's my aircraft. We're flying manually now. Let's go geared out. VFNX minus 10, flaps 3. VFNX minus 10, the flaps full. Landing checklist, 1 able. We'll wait for it to populate there on the ECAM, so we get about 2,000 feet or so. Now also when we put the gear down, we should get a lower ECAM bringing up our in-op systems, which it's not simulated, but at least we know it should be there. Alright, there's our glide slope. I'll get that rudder, notify the flight attendants. Oh jeez, come on now. There we go. I know, I was looking up, I wasn't paying attention. Let's try to get back on this glide slope. Alright, landing checklist, cabin crew advised, auto thrust is off. ECAM memo, landing all green. Landing checklist complete. Trying to get back on the slope here. One thing you don't want to end up doing is having to climb single engine in the landing configuration. It can do it, but don't want to put yourself in that position. Alright, so I'm really working that left rudder, so I'm going to get more trim in there. There we go. We're back on the slope now. We're stable at 1,000. 2 whites, 2 reds. We're on the slope. And also one thing I just remembered, we cannot land with the crossfeed open. That is a limitation. We'll go ahead and turn that crossfeed off. $1,000 stable. beta target is, or the side slip indicator is neutral. That's good. Let's see if I can do a little bit better on the single engine landing here. The yaw definitely is more prevalent when you're coming in single engine and you bring the thrust lever to idle. If you have that trim in there, it wants to yaw back the opposite direction. So you got to be ready to counter that. But hey, with an engine fire, the last thing you're worried about is getting a smooth landing. In real life, I would probably just chop the throttle right at retard and just let it slam down because you want to get out. I don't know why it always trips the terrain there. That's not accurate. Happened last time too.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
There we go. We'll take a butter on that. All right, we are down decel. Spoilers. Reverse green. We're in emergency. I'm going to use reverse thrust down to aircraft stop. Manual brakes. Stow the buckets. Set the brake. Flight attendant stations and say, hey Cap, we are still on fire down here. We can see smoke and stuff still coming from the engine. I'd say, okay, stand by. We're going to evacuate the aircraft. So now we'll pull up our evacuation checklist. And we know we're still on fire. So aircraft parking brake is stop on. Crew PA, flight attendant stations. ATC, we would tell them, hey, you know, we are going to evacuate on 16 center. Engine master switch 1 and 2 off. Engine master 1 and 2 off. Fire push buttons, engine and APU. Push that. We're going ahead and do engine and APU. We're going to stop them both. Agents, engines and APU discharge if necessary. We don't need to discharge them. We know that the fire was isolated over here on engine 2. Evacuation command is then now, I'll say evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. Oops, wrong button. This one here. And then I can't. We are going to evacuate now. So now we'd open the doors. I'm going to shut that off just because it's annoying. And we would evacuate. Fuel trucks would come up and extinguish the fire, hopefully. And everybody can walk off safe and sound. Hey, at least the doors opened up. That's kind of cool. It'd be cool if they had slide animations. Well, that was a mouthful, but we are down on the ground. And that's going to be... Man, we're right on centerline, too. Nice. Let's go ahead and watch this touchdown replay. And that's going to end today's stream with Emergencies. But I'm sorry it's not exactly by the book. You know, it's pretty hard doing it single pilot. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to be doing a multi-crew. I think it'd be really cool to be able to have another guy in here running the checklist together. But for me, just single pilot, trying to do it for you guys. I hope it was sufficient enough. Hope you learned something. Let me get back to some of these comments here as we watch this smoky engine coming in on approach. Austrian279 says, do you lose your license then, or only the job? You know, you'd lose your job. You wouldn't lose your license. But it would go as a failure on your license. And any job you try to get from then on, they would say, hey, you failed a check ride here. What happened with this? Why did you fail? Blah, blah, blah. And good luck getting hired again. Barack Uslu said there's latency. I donated before rolling. Barack, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much again for that, man. That was pretty fun. That was pretty funny, though. Dougal Mechanics says, I have enormous respect for commercial pilots, but it continues to rise. Thank you, Dougal. Appreciate it. So you can see there that engine reverse didn't open, which is correct. That's good. Engine 2 was shut down, so that's actually correct there. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit from here, then we'll watch a couple exterior ones. Would you have to bleed fuel in a case like this? I'm assuming you mean dumping fuel. There is no fuel dump in the A320, so you are not able to dump fuel. You would definitely look at your landing weight, make sure you are below max, and even if you were above max landing weight, if you're on fire, I'm landing anyway. I'm not going to worry about an overweight landing. It's just something to brief, and I'm going to land anyway, because an overweight landing, yeah, you might damage the landing gear, but if you continue to fly around while you're on fire, you're going to have a lot more problems than you would if you were just to land. Yep, Wizz Air said you can still land overweight, just requires maintenance. Yeah, there was a Swiss Air flight that crashed because they decided to burn fuel. They went into a holding pattern. They were concerned about overweight landing, and they went out and held, and then the fire consumed the aircraft and killed everybody. So, hey, if I'm on fire, I'm getting the airplane on the ground. Alright, let's take a couple shots of these from outside. Ooh, there's a Boeing field there. That's pretty cool. Go back a little far on that one. Smokey Joe coming in. Oh, our doors are open. Huh, oops. She's on fire. Ooh, yeah. That was a nice touchdown. A little off center line, though. I like how the smoke effect changes as the airplane slows down, though. As I go in reverse. And then as the speed slows down, you can see the smoke. Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Man, I love the 319s. Cute little airplane. Alright, guys, I'm going to leave you with a few more external shots from the tower here. And it's been a shorter stream for sure. I apologize if it was if you were expecting something a little bit longer, but running through emergencies like that can definitely wear me out. I actually have something I need to attend to as well, but expect the full Checkride, mock Checkride prep video. So far I'm still planning it for tomorrow. We may have to back it up a little bit. I'll let you guys know in the Discord, or you'll be able to see it on the notification page there on YouTube. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. And thank you again for donations, my mods, my sponsors, everybody just hanging out here and chat with me. It's been fun. Have a wonderful rest of your Black Friday if you're here in the States, or Cyber Monday that is approaching us on a Monday. And I will catch you guys on the next one. See ya!